From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, a weekly show for basketball gamers and hardcore hoopheads. This is episode 585. I'm Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. I'm joined as always by my co-host Derek, DP3 in the forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, we're actually recording this ahead of Game 7 of the NBA Finals. The show is going to be coming out after that, so congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder. However, we're thinking about the virtual hardwood this week, and in particular, its future, so please, tip us off.
Yeah, with NBA 2K26 preview season closing in, we asked, what improvements would you like to see in the newest 2K? So we actually received many community responses to this question, but as usual, we'll lead off with what we would like to see, our opinions and whatnot. So, Andrew, I'll kick this off, and I'm going to start with gameplay. So, improved foot planning. This will help the feel of the game the most out of any other gameplay improvements, in my opinion. I want to see foot planning as good as NBA 2K13, as good as NBA 2K14 PC, 2K15, 2K16, 2K17. It's been done before. They should be able to do it again. Players should be able to stop on a dime like they do in real life. It will just help so much with the feel and flow of the game. You and I consistently revisit past titles, including NBA 2K9, which we have a season on. We're 6 games into that season as of today's date. And you really can feel the difference as far as foot planning goes with those classic titles compared to the PS5 gen 2Ks and whatnot. You just, the ability to, stop when you want, the ability to stop on the dime and take a shot instead of momentum moving you forward and you sliding forward, the ability to slide your feet better on defense and more realistically, etc. We notice it when we play the classic titles. We want to see more of that in NBA 2K26.
Oh, that's a big one for me as well. It's why I'm playing those older games. I prefer the feel of them. I just haven't really been able to get into the feel of recent 2Ks, and even 2K25, which I've liked more than other PlayStation 5 9th gen releases. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that begins with good foot planting.
The next one for me is improved player movement. Changing directions shouldn't look or feel as clunky. Players should move more like humans. So many movements in the game have a hitch to them, an unnatural hitch. An example would be try to go in a circle with your player, like dribble in a circle, and look how awkwardly your player moves and look how the ball transfers hands, etc. I just think that they could still do more with making the players move like more human-like, for example. And, we actually had that in some past games. I think the players often move more like humans, more like basketball players, etc. in games like NBA 2K16, NBA 2K17, etc.
For sure, there's just that heavy feel to the players, and that does come down to the foot planting mechanics and the overall motion system as they work out stuff with pro play. I imagine there's still some teething problems there. That is one of my improvements that I'd like to see. But yeah, the feel of the player movement, that it feels good on the sticks, that it feels responsive. There's been so many videos, as you've seen, Derek, on social media of people showing just how much input delay there is, hitting the stick for a dribbling move, and then a second goes by, and then the player makes that move. There needs to be that responsiveness on the sticks.
Yeah, I've seen videos about the delay, and I've also seen videos about the lack of realistic acceleration when you try to make a quick move. I've seen
the hitch, yeah.
The hitch that I'm talking about with basic player movement. And they've definitely done it better in past 2Ks, like I mentioned. The next one is less suction, less feeling like I am attached to another player unnaturally. That's a killer for me in NBA 2K8, actually, and it was a killer for you as well, as it just feels like every direction you went on NBA 2K8, you felt like there was a defender attached to your hip, like a canned animation the whole time while you're trying to drive to the hoop or while you're trying to work your way around the perimeter. And I think a game like NBA 2K16, NBA 2K14, NBA 2K14 PC, 2K13, but mostly the titles 2K14, 2K16, found the best balance between brick wall defense and some side-by-sides, and just the game flows and feels a lot better in those games at times than the newest 2Ks because there isn't as much suction. There's not too much brick wall defense. There's not too many canned animations. And that's why games like NBA 2K14 and 2K16 really stand the test of time. And they still play so well. I also want to point out that with less suction, you open up that high post game. You open up the low post game a little bit more. You open up that mid-range game a little bit more because, you could attack those areas more realistically and better back in the titles I mentioned and some other ones as well, more than you could in, these PS5 Gen 2Ks.
Definitely. But like you say, it has been an issue that we've seen over the years. And that's what's frustrating about 2K. Obviously, they have had more consistent quality than NBA Live has had, and NBA Live really struggled to come back on the 8th generation. I know this show isn't about NBA Live, but obviously that is a comparison worth making. But yeah, we have seen that issue come up, the issue of suction come up so many times, and of course movement and foot planting as well. But that false feeling of getting sucked into the defender, the hip riding, the brick wall defense, as you say, some games have done it better than others, and those tend to be our favourites. No surprise there. 2K8, like you say, definitely bothered me in that game. 2K9, not so much. Although the vacuum rebounds that give us some cheap offensive interference and defensive goaltending violations, that is something to avoid in 2K26.
You gotta love, like, every time that happens, and it does happen a couple times a game to us in NBA 2K9, it's one of the game's biggest weaknesses. I think you would agree. Every time there's one of those suction goaltending calls, whether it be on the offensive or defensive end, I go into the replay.
You have to.
And show, you have to, and show that we indeed did not interfere. It was not a goaltend, and it was just the ball warping to our hands and the game thinking that the ball was still on the rim, but it absolutely was not. So I think 2K9 is an amazing game. I think it's shot really high up your list. For me, when we were doing our rankings, I ranked it higher than NBA 2K8 and NBA 2K10. You're seeing why now. But that is one of the biggest weaknesses in that game.
It is. And look, no game is perfect. Pretty much all of my favorites have some kind of quirky issue, some kind of teething problem for some new technology, some mistake, maybe a small bug in a mode or something. I can't think of any basketball video game that is absolutely perfect. And perfect games and perfect software, that's a pretty high bar to set for software development and game development anyway. But yeah, there's always little issues like that. But yeah, you have to go into instant replay and just prove to yourself, no, I didn't mess up. That was the game screwing me over. But to that point, we don't want to see those canned sequences. We don't want anything to feel phony. We don't want to see the strings. We want the smoke and mirrors to really mask some of those mechanics as best as possible. And the best games do tend to have good smoke and mirrors, for lack of a better term. But yeah, that is what I want to see out of 2K26 as well.
Next on my list is less ball warping on dribbles. I still see it quite a bit where the ball just kind of like transfers hands from the left to the right or the right to the left. And it just makes everything with the ball look unnatural. And a big one that as it relates to dribbling, Andrew, get rid of the forced hesitation dribbles that happen so often. The game is constantly forcing you into this weird hesitation dribble. It looks super awkward on highlights. The majority of highlights that I see people post on social media or on YouTube are flooded with these forced hesitation dribbles. And it's not the user's fault, right? The majority of the time, the game is like forcing you into it. Sometimes it forces you into it in the backcourt when you're just trying to bring up the ball. It forces you into them when you're trying to go one-on-one. It forces you into them at times when you're halfway through a drive. You're like halfway to the hoop, and then all of a sudden your guy does a hesitation, and it looks so stupid and unnatural. I don't know why that mechanic is in the game. I don't know why it's forced. You should be able to decide if you want to do a hesitation, not be forced into it. So that is a big one for me. I think that dribbling, we've talked about this before, in general has felt more natural and like you were in more control of it in many past 2Ks. But overall, you've seen my highlights with CJ McCollum. You've seen my highlights with Donovan Mitchell. I post stuff on Twitter. I post stuff on YouTube and everything. I can do a lot with this dribbling system, and there are things that I really like about it. I love the snappy crossovers. I love the way size-ups work and how you can break out of them. I love how smooth they often look. I love the quick spin dribble off the body when somebody is really close up on you. So realistic. looks awesome. So I don't hate the dribbling system in totality, but there's definitely ways that it can be improved.
And dribbling is a big one for you. And I am on record, I believe I am, and if not, I will go on record now to say that you are one of the best I've seen on the sticks when it comes to making dribbling moves and making those moves in rhythm and not just wiggling the stick and hoping for the best. I actually try to imitate you. I'm trying to learn from your virtual ball handling skills. But that is a problem, and I see it as well. It reminds me of other annoyances that I've had with NBA Live, for example, where you've had that dribbling animation when you're bringing the ball up the court after inbounding, after a bucket. You see them going into some automatic animations, dribbling up the court, bit of a skip, bit of a between the legs, behind the back, whatever. It looks okay, but when it's happening every single time, it is annoying. And the hitch dribbles and other canned, predetermined animations like this in 2K, it is another issue we've seen before, and that is bothersome. And it's also one of the reasons why I say, Derek, it doesn't matter what the tech is. It doesn't matter if you say, take NBA Live to Frostbite, or bring in Eco Motion back to NBA 2K, or bring in some new engine, or whatever. It needs to be designed correctly. The technology needs to be harnessed correctly, and those animations designed and implemented properly, and avoid issues like this.
Yeah, it almost feels like a completely new team took ownership of the gameplay when 2K18 rolled out, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just
mistakes,
so much different in this motion system. And there's still a lot of issues, even with the revamp in 2K20. Actually, I think it created almost some more issues because I think 2K19 is the strongest title since 2K17,
Agreed.
Just in my opinion. And then I think for PS5 gen, for me and my brothers, 2K25 is the strongest that they've had on PS5 gen. But I'll get into that in a minute. The next one, and you might agree with this, I think the shooting in these games has become overly complicated, making the action frustrating and often
Agreed.
less realistic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think there needs to be a more universal feel to shooting. I think you shouldn't have to have multiple different shooting options, low risk reward, blah, 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 blah. And, to choose from. I think that confuses people. And I think that it makes the experience less consistent and more complicated. I think that there's a way to do this better. There's a way to make the contest system more realistic. I think that in the past, it's been pretty damn realistic in games like NBA 2K16, right? I think that the right stick usage on shooting overall, while I do love the ability to do step backs and the different things that you can do with the right stick right now, I think that as far as, shot aiming and use of that stick, and I think you would agree with this as well, it may have worked best in 2K17. Right? That simple approach, I think it made a lot of sense. I think that overall, shooting shouldn't be as frustrating or feel as frustrating or as unrealistic as it has on the PS5 gen 2Ks. So I would love to see a more universal, more realistic feel to the shooting.
Have to co-sign that as well. And I don't want shooting to be so reliant on green releases. I mean, green releases, by all means, make them the guaranteed bucket or the highest percentage possible if you don't want them to be absolutely guaranteed. I don't think they can move away from guaranteed green releases. I think gamers are too conditioned to that. I've been playing some NBA Live 16 recently that has a different shooting system, as you know, percentage-based, based on best possible release, best possible chance of going in, based on ratings, position on the floor, coverage, etc. And it's a good system, but I do find myself kind of frustrated with the fact that, I've made a perfect release or the optimum release, and yet I will still miss a shot with a good shooter. We are very reliant on green releases. We've definitely been conditioned to want green releases, a guaranteed make. So I think there is value in having a small window either side for the almost perfect release, so you can at least make contested shots, because players do make contested shots. And to your point, shooting shouldn't be so impossible, especially offline. If you want to make online totally skill-based and only for the most hardcore of hardcore, I think that's a mistake as well. I think you need to introduce people to the online scene and make that accessible and then ramp up the difficulty as the case may be. But sure, if you want to make it for the competitive scene, ultra-competitive, fine. Offline, make it sim, make it accessible, make it fun, for sure. These mechanics like early release, late release, those options, do you get the impression that they're Band-Aid fixes for problems with the shooting mechanics?
I do, and at the same time, I do think that they're trying to give gamers more options, and we love options, right? But we don't like options that are, potentially band-aid fixes, or or to try to like hide problems, right? I think the same thing. Remember with layup timing, where it's like they have it set where layup timing is controlled not by the user, and that's by default, and that's because layup timing has been it's been basically broken for the most part, over the last few years. So their band-aid fix for that is, no, we're not going to fix the user timing, or we can't fix the user timing. We're going to, make it so by default it's controlled by the AI. So I'm not a big fan of band-aid fixes like that. I do want to point out that one thing that I don't like about shooting, and this is a lot different than it was in past video games, and we're experiencing it in 2K9 right now, because we're not playing it on the hardest difficulty. But when let's say you play in my team on NBA 2K25, on pro or rookie or even all-star, you find yourself hitting contested shots, right? Like, I will hit contested shots pretty consistently on those difficulty levels, but the computer can't hit one. They will not hit one. There is a giant imbalance between the computer's capabilities on those levels and your ability to do that same function. And it's very strange, because that's why you get into these games where you play the computer on pro or all-star or something like that, and you find yourself holding them, it's like in a My Team challenge, to like 15 points, right? And you have 80 or something like that. And that's because it's so easy to get out on them, and they will never, ever hit a contested shot. I remember playing multiple games in my team, and I don't think they made one semi-contested or contested shot. I think there needs to be more of a balance. I think the contest system needs work. I think that it needs to make more sense from the AI side and from the human side. Because how many people, Andrew, are playing the game against the computer or with computer teammates? A lot. Right? There's probably millions of people that still do that, and whatnot. So I think that needs to be addressed and looked at.
It does, and balance is so important. And ideally, we want the increase in difficulty to still keep that sim style, to still be realistic, to still have that balance. I know it's tough to have the CPU be really challenging without being a little bit cheap or whatever, but that is the challenge when you are making a sim basketball game. And I'll get more into the difficult levels when it comes to my team when we talk about modes. But yeah, it's definitely something to address.
The last item on my list as it relates to gameplay is make on-ball steals more realistic. Add more steal animations for when you time a steal properly. Right now, it feels often like it's press steal to foul, right? Like, the only way that I find myself ever getting on-ball steals is sitting my body unnaturally next to a dribbler and just mashing the steal button and it dislodging the ball, and it just looks so awkward. It doesn't feel realistic. It feels like I'm almost cheating the game to get a steal, right? And then, like, this, and we talked about this when we connected on it, and if a player is just holding the ball out in front of him and you press the steal button, you feel like the game's going to force you into a foul. Right? He's going to wrap him up. It's going to be a forced foul. And I just think that there's got to be a better way. And I feel like there's been great steal mechanics in the past in games, again, like 2K17. I think those have great steal mechanics. NBA 2K14 PC has some of the best, in my opinion. Actually, NBA 2K14 for PS4, which is on your My Career, how awesome are the steal mechanics on that game? I see your highlights. I see you getting those poke steals. I see the different animations that play out. They look organic. They feel organic when you do them. It's a great way to get out on the break realistically, etc. So I'd love to see on-ball steals worked on to be made more realistic.
Another legacy issue that keeps popping up year after year, or certainly rears its ugly head every few years or so, as the case may be. 2K17, definitely one of my favorites. 2K14 as well. Yeah, love making those steals. Love knocking it up in the air and then pressing jump to grab that ball that I've knocked up into the air and then spinning around and taking it out on the break. Live 18 is another game that I love, the steal mechanics in that game as well. So it can be done. You don't have to have press steal to foul, or also press steal and watch them automatically elude you with the dribble. Like, it just feels very canned either way.
So before I throw it over to you for any other items that I didn't mention that you may have on your list. I do want to point out that I've played almost 400 hours of NBA 2K25, completed a full WNBA season, completed a full Legend season, 12-minute quarters. I have played it co-op. I've played it head-to-head, etc. It is my favorite 2K on PS5 gen. I think that they did make positive improvements in some areas. The full integration of pro play, just the animations that play out at the hoop on layups and dunks, the different animations that it's added, giving the game more authenticity, the players more authenticity, etc. I have really enjoyed that aspect. I love the size up system in this game and how it works. I love the use of the right stick to get into passing lanes, to play off ball defense, the way those deflections work when you use the right stick. I love that stuff. I think shooting overall is an improvement over a few of the past 2Ks as well. Oftentimes when I'm playing with my brothers and whatnot, we will choose like the low risk reward option, and it does create a more realistic feel to the action. I would recommend anybody who, plays locally and whatnot to choose the low risk reward option, because I think that it makes more sense as it relates to open shots, contested shots, etc. But I do like a lot of what they did with NBA 2K25 from a gameplay perspective. But the items that I mentioned, if they could tighten up those areas, if they could fix some of the player movement issues, if they could fix the foot planning and make it like it was in so many past NBA 2Ks before PS5 gen, if they could, make the player movement less delayed and glitchy, and and whatnot, and make defense feel a little bit more organic and authentic, it could be my favorite 2K ever, right? You never know. So yeah, I have put in the hours. I have enjoyed NBA 2K25. You haven't heard us complain that much about it on the show, right? Because I have been enjoying it for the most part. So that makes me a little bit optimistic and, a little bit more excited for 2K26.
Yeah, absolutely some cause for optimism. And as you and our listeners know, I didn't get into the game as much as I hoped, but I still have fairly positive impressions of it. But if it can improve in those areas, I co-sign all that once again. I think 2K26 could be a huge improvement and certainly might draw me in, especially if I'm drawn into the content and the modes. And now that I'm back in some franchise gaming, my NBA eras is something that I can definitely sink my teeth into and am willing to sink my teeth into if I enjoy the gameplay. Again, didn't play 2K25 as much. Probably going to give it another go during the off-season. As I said in a previous show, hasn't really captured my imagination. I've really been drawn to my old favourites and finding new favourites, Derek, and sometimes that does make it difficult to look to the future. But that being said, these improvements will definitely make 2K26 much better and probably get it into my rotation from day one. I'll also throw out there that they didn't really change a lot with the patches for the worse. That was a problem for a few years there, where you'd get the tuning updates through and it would really affect the game negatively, week to week sometimes, or tuning update to tuning update. They've really backed off from that. That has been for the best, so that is a good move. We are critical when we think it's warranted, but credit where it's due as well. You've already covered a lot of the improvements that I want to see, but I'll also throw out the suggestion to allow more flexibility as far as changing gameplay options, disabling the alley-oop meter, disabling timing here and there, being able to customize the local experience. Once again, if you want to force these so-called skill-based mechanics on the online scene, or if you want to provide them for people who want that input, I know that you and your brothers really have come to enjoy the alley-oop meter, for example, but make it optional for offline gamers.
No, we don't like the meter. I not to interrupt you. We hate the meter. The meter is ugly. It is huge. It is terrible. The fact that you can't turn that off, I think, is ridiculous. We absolutely should have the option to do so. But before you continue, I want to point out, one of my brothers loves it. So my brother Nick times it so well. Right? Him and I, we know how to time it.
Yep.
Whether we're playing co-op or we're playing ourselves and we have to control both the throw and the catch. Like, we complete almost 100% of our alley-oops every time. But my other brother, Mark, hates it. He can't throw an alley-oop. He can't buy an alley-oop. He has stopped throwing them. We are coming up on 7 or 8 games into our fantasy draft season, and he has not thrown one alley-oop because he knows he can't do it. He can't figure out the timing. The old mechanics fit him more, right? And I think he should have an option to turn that timing off. I agree with you. That's why that's a great improvement idea. I think that, if my brother and I want to be able to have the timing with the meter off, obviously because we hate the meter, we should be able to do that, but he should be able to turn it off if he wants.
Well, that's a good point. I said meter. I do really mean mechanic. And to that point, have the option to independently turn off both the meter and the mechanic, or keep the mechanic and just turn off the visual display, obviously. And that's actually something I've done with my NBA Live 16 Dynasty. You might have seen that in the clips that I've been sending you, Derek, that I have turned off a lot of the on-screen prompts. I have kept the shooting meter, actually, because I kind of use that as a crutch. I'll be honest, when it comes to NBA Live 16, I do use that as a crutch. But yeah, being able to turn off the meter, the visual representation, also go back to the simpler mechanic as well if you just want to get rid of it completely, have both options in the game. I think it's just so important to have that kind of customization for the offline experience, the traditional local multiplayer or local single-player experience. Don't hold offline gameplay, local multiplayer, and certainly solo play against the CPU to the same standards as the competitive online scene. That's just ridiculous. It's the same reason we have sliders. Of course you don't want to have sliders in the online scene, because people would just mess around and cheat when they play online. So it makes sense there. But offline, you want to be able to customize the game. Sure, you want the default mechanics and the default options to be preferable for most people, as much as you possibly can, based on telemetry data, I suppose, and of course, user feedback when you solicit it. But yeah, give us those options. Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So, Andrew, let's get into mode improvements that we would like to see. So I'll throw it over to you first. What would you like to see for an improvement mode-wise?
Well, I brought up my NBA eras, and look, there are obviously going to be problems with licensing here. It's never going to be perfect. But for a start, actually pay more attention to the accuracy of the rosters for the players that you can license. Don't make great athletes of the past insultingly sluggish and not able to shoot when they certainly could shoot. And basically, the inaccuracies throughout the roster, you've been pointing this out since 2K20, if not earlier. You had that big thread for 2K20, or 2K21, actually. It was in late 2020, so it would have been 2K21. They have actually fixed some of those issues very quietly, I think, after you pointed them out. I'll just put that out there. But that is an ongoing problem, the lack of accuracy there. As far as the placeholder players, I want them to be less prominent. If there's a way to make those placeholders, those roster players, less impactful, at least until they're replaced in custom rosters, and give us the option to do that. I want more accuracy throughout the years as well. You've got a lot of the art in the game already. Make sure that that's tightened up. Make sure that as you're progressing through the years, the teams actually change to the right branding at the right time. That is still a problem. They've done a great job as far as having the rules change and other aspects of the league change when they're supposed to change, but there's still some inaccuracies there. Polish that up, because that is the whole point of the mode. It just does take away from that experience a little bit. I would love to have custom starting points, to be honest. Love to have custom starting points. Even if you don't have rosters for each one of those starting points, allow us to pick the year and then create a custom roster and start in that year. If I want to move the Jordan era up to 1996 instead of starting in 1992, allow me to choose 1996 as the starting point and either take the 92 rosters in there or take a custom roster that somebody has updated for the 96 season. This is an idea that I think Vetman and a couple of others have actually floated on our Discord. Absolutely agree with it. Would love to see it. And yeah, just basically polish up that My NBA Era's experience, because there's a great framework there, some great options already, but it's just not done as well or as accurately as it could and should be.
The big one for me there is just how the players play on the floor, right? Like I can deal with some inaccuracies as it relates to courts, as it relates to jersey assignments, especially when you're moving through the seasons, right? Like I understand that sometimes either licensing gets in the way, maybe development time. I mean, that's not our fault, right? The game should be complete when it's released, like the games used to be, and whatnot. But the big one for me is just how the players play on the court, and I do think that it's still overall low priority, right? They want to advertise the mode, but they don't want to give it the attention that it deserves as it relates to the players, having shooting forms that they should. That's more realistic to the real life counterpart.
Definitely.
Free throw shooting motions, the way they move on the court, like you said, oftentimes much more sluggish than they were in real life. You and I tried to play a game with early 90s Sean Kemp, and it was a nightmare. That Sonics team didn't feel good. Sean Kemp felt horrible on the floor. We stopped that game early because we're like, this is not fun at
this sucks.
all. And yeah, this sucks, right? And then you play with the current teams, and it's like, wow, the game is more free-flowing. It plays better. And why? Because the current roster got the attention that it deserved. And I want to point out, too, is not only is it these rosters not getting the attention that they deserve, I think the people that are working on them don't know their basketball history, right? So how are you going to give somebody the appropriate shot if you don't do the research or know your history? How are you going to make them play like their real life counterpart? Are there politics involved? All of that stuff. I think it's more along the lines of low priority and the people that are working on it not really knowing what they're doing, to be honest with you, as opposed to politics. But that could also come into play. But the biggest thing is that they need to play better on the virtual hardwood. Andrew, I'm going to go over one of mine real quick, and I'll throw it back to you. Give blacktop mode more love, right? Give people more courts to choose from. You only have one right now. You got the court where the fans do run out on it. It is cool. I had a highlight in the top 10 recently showing that there's a drone flying overhead, which you can see on the broadcast cam when you're playing on blacktop, and that actually weirdly shouldn't be there, right? Like, why is there a drone flying so low on some blacktop gameplay? I know there's NBA players out there and everything like that, but it's kind of distracting and a little weird. But you know what? There shows some effort there, right? Like they were trying to make it cool and the atmosphere cool. But I'd love to see more courts. Maybe they can get the rights to some of the legendary courts to put into the game. Allow people to choose what they wear for jerseys, maybe give more options, etc. So, I'd love to see more love given to blacktop mode because I do think that more people would play it.
It'd be really cool. And unfortunately, it's not a priority. It doesn't make them any money. So that is always the obstacle when it comes to this. But I absolutely agree. That would be awesome. I've gotten into blacktop. Justming, if you're listening, you can absolutely point and laugh because we always ribbed Justming about his love of blacktop, and now I love blacktop as well. Maybe not as much as Justming and you do, but I still do enjoy it. I would love to have that option. And you go back to games like NBA 2K6, which has become a retroactive favorite of mine now, Derek. You look at all the street courts that you had in street mode. You had Rucker Park. They licensed Rucker Park. I assume it has to be licensed. And other venues as well, some really cool venues. When I went back and finally took a look at 24/7 mode, some of the venues there, the construction site in ESPN NBA 2K5, very cool idea. The driveway courts, playing 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 on the driveway courts. And there was a barnyard court in the NBA 2K19 My Career story that was exclusive to the story of that mode, and it's not available. Things like that, being able to play in those different venues, those little extras that go the extra mile, just adding a little bit more content that's in the game, in some cases, but adding that extra content to modes like Blacktop. No, it's not absolutely necessary. No, it's not going to make them any money, but it's going to inspire a lot of goodwill and let you have some fun.
Agreed. What else do you have?
So I mentioned the difficulty levels in my team, and I do think there needs to be a bit more flexibility there as far as domination. I like the older approach as far as choosing the higher difficulty level to get the higher points, more rewards, etc., greater rewards for those games, not making it dependent on those difficulty levels to progress. Also, when it comes to agendas, look, I understand the philosophy of trying to get people to play different things within the modes, But unfortunately, you end up pushing people towards the sub-modes that they don't want to play, and experiences within the mode that they don't want to play just to get the rewards. And that doesn't make it fun. So I'm actually going to suggest taking a page out of NBA 2K Playgrounds 2 and the reward system there, where you can opt to replace an agenda item with something that's either randomly chosen, I guess that's luck of the draw, or if you can substitute that for a mode that you like. Say you just want to play through domination, you're not really into the other modes. If you do get an agenda item that says play clutch time or triple threat or whatever, you can substitute that for an equivalent challenge in domination. Again, it's about flexibility. Like I said, I realize that they're trying to promote different experiences within my team, different sub-modes, and it does encourage people to try new things, but not everybody wants to. So give people that choice and that flexibility.
Yeah, I'll also point out that I think that the mode itself, and the reason why this wouldn't take place is because they won't make as much money, in my opinion. I think that's why the current system is in place. But making players more widely available early on. I think this whole seasons thing has made it so you can't get your favorite player in my team mode until like months and months and months after the game has already been out, right? Which is completely different than the way it used to be. Like if I wanted Kobe Bryant in my team in NBA 2K15, I could get him out of the gate as long as I had the appropriate in-game currency or my team points or whatever in order to acquire him. Now, the way it works is, I want to piece together this lineup, but this player isn't available until season 2. This player isn't available until this season. I'm going to have to play months with a player in that spot that I don't want to use, right? Because he's no longer available. So I think that acquiring players, whether it be in packs or whether it be in the auction house, all of that stuff, like, make more players available out of the gate. But as you and I know, that will probably not happen because they want to make more money.
Yeah, that is the problem when it comes to my team and to that point, my career as well. Even so, I will throw out the suggestion to make the starting ratings for my player. This is overdue. Make those starting ratings good enough. Make your my player competent enough out of the gate that if you jump online with your 70, 75 overall instead of a pathetic 60 overall, which is lower than any rookie is rated in the official rosters, if you make them 70 to 75 overall with proper athletic ratings, athletic attributes, if you can make it so that anybody with good stick skills can jump online as they're still grinding up, maybe they're not going to be able to shoot the lights out, they're not going to be able to dominate, but they're still going to be able to move around, they're not going to be just moving like a slug all over the court. With good stick skills, they can defend, they can move the ball, they can play a role, a smaller role, obviously, when they don't have all the ratings and badges yet. And here's the thing. You can up that to 70 to 75 overall with decent athletic attributes and still make it a long enough and satisfying journey to 99 overall. And it's not like it's satisfying now, it's a tremendous grind. But you can still have a long journey that is still going to encourage people or try to push people towards microtransactions, because we know they're not going to get rid of that. So you can still have those mechanics in the game, you can still make your money, you're still going to make a mint, even if you have those starting ratings at least be decent, so you can at least have a competent player out of the gate. It's gotten to the point where it's not fun. You know, it's not just a case of, everybody wants to be 99 overall the first week. That is the apologist rhetoric that shills like to throw out there. That's not the case, mostly. There might be some people who want to be 99 overall in the first week, and they are missing the point. But the way it's designed at the moment, it is not a fun journey if you decide not to pay. And that's what they say. It's optional, Derek. You don't have to pay for VC. You don't have to buy VC. You can just do it the long way. But the long way sucks. It is not a fun experience to take the long route. That is the problem. It is not designed to be fun. It is designed intentionally to be less fun, to get you to spend. That's why the mode is so miserable now. It's just become so inaccessible, not fun at all. So, look, it's unlikely because it is going against a greedy approach, just like my team. But I'll throw it out there, Derek. Make the starting ratings fair. Make it a fun journey. It's still going to make money because people are still going to pay for those early boosts, but at least people who don't can get online and compete. And of course, get some proper matchmaking in there. And look, I'd love them to get rid of the open worlds. I think they're done very poorly. I don't think they add anything to the experience. If nothing else, add some more fast travel options, add the ability to jump straight to shops or go straight into modes instead of having to run around this virtual world and visit these different buildings. and get rid of some of those MMORPG mechanics. It's not going to happen, but that would be my suggestion. That's certainly my wish.
Nobody should have to pay extra over the base price of the game to have fun with the game. Right. And that's that intentional grind that you talk about. That's in place for a reason. And it is a damn shame. And I know that you've been super turned off by the online scene in the games, mostly because of that, right? Because you don't want to have to grind. You don't want to have to, put in extra money in order to just have fun with the game. So on top of you not enjoying the gameplay mechanics in many different ways, yeah, I mean, that's a huge turnoff. So I definitely agree there. I wanted to point out just a couple items as it relates to player customization. I think that the games are sorely due for a new create a player tool. I think that this one's been in place now, I want to say since 2K18 and or 2K19.
About then,
and it's run its course. It's been the same create a player tool with just a couple new hairstyles and whatnot added for 6-7 years. And I think that people, should be able to sculpt the heads better. I think that the created players should look more realistic than they do nowadays. They still look very created, in my opinion. I think that is long overdue. I also want to point out that they've taken away so many of the shooting animations that were in games like NBA 2K17, 2K19, and whatnot. And now just the shooting animations are attached to player names. There's no longer like jump shot 112 or, base, 75, etc. I think that it's harder to make accurate rosters, especially for my NBA eras today, due to the fact that there's less customization options when you're editing players. There's less shot animations to choose from, less free throw animations to choose from, etc. So that is also unfortunate, and I'd like to see more animations added back.
Yeah, we really are overdue for some improvements to the customization options. We're decades into sim basketball games, Derek, and we still can't enter draft information for a player. That is something I'd love to see for custom rosters. I'd really like to see the ability to add career stats. If you're adding missing players, if you're creating a Charles Barkley or Rasheed Wallace or Reggie Miller or anyone else that they're not going to CTC, cut the check for, as Sheed put it, to be able to add them in proper detail and give them all of that information without an external tool. That is something I really want to see, and somehow, decades later, we haven't had that in-game functionality with edit or create a player. So I'd absolutely love to see more tools like that, as well as face sculpting options as well. That is very important to actually get the players looking as authentic as possible and not created, because that was the big problem in the early 3D era. As you know, Derek, trying to add players. I'm sprucing up this NBA Live 99 roster, my 2002 roster update for NBA Live 99, trying to add some faces because, look, it was fine at the time, especially releasing that roster in the dial-up days when you couldn't have a big download with all this artwork. But when we're talking about a game released for a 9th generation console, creating players, we want them to blend in as much as possible with the original players. But yeah, I'm all for overhauling and adding to the customization tools and whatever else they can add as far as custom teams and editing teams outside of my NBA eras and my league, whatever. Yeah, I'm all for that as well. NBA might have something to say about that. They might not want us to be able to reskin the game that easily. That's always an issue, having to comply with what the NBA wants. But if the NBA has no problem with it, then yeah, bring that functionality out of the franchise modes and put it into roster customization just natively by default outside of those modes. I'll also throw out for 2K Pro-Am, the Team Pro-Am, bring back the ability to play with less than 5 players. People talk about, nobody wants to play with bots. Get into the rec, and then you end up playing against bots in the rec anyway, so why not just make it an option if you don't want to play against AI opponents, set that in your matchmaking settings, or just simply don't match up teams of 5 against teams of 3 or 4 or whatever. There's a way around it. Those modes need to be accessible. And for those of us who are international gamers, Derek, playing on different servers, you don't always have full squads. That was not a problem in 2K17. But again, people want it to be this ultra-competitive scene. They want it to be the home version of the 2K League. And how successful is the 2K League, Derek? Just putting that out there. But have that flexibility, that accessibility in the online scene. They've really catered to the elitists. I say elitists, not elite gamers, Derek. Elitist attitudes, not necessarily elite skills, but certainly that elitist attitude as far as the competitive scene. They've been catering to that. It's just destroyed the online scene. Yes, there are obviously still people playing 2K Online, but it is, from what I've heard, still incredibly toxic. All the problems that I talked about when I was playing online all those years. So yeah, they really need to address that, and that's well overdue. And one more miscellaneous note before I throw it back to you for any further suggestions you have for modes and features. When you start up the game, don't take us right into something like My Career, like they did with 2K25. And I say that as somebody who does enjoy My Career, Derek. Don't have that on first boot. Don't force us to create a My Player. Don't force us to play a My Career game, whether it's a prelude or some kind of introductory game. Not everybody wants to do that. I know you can just quit out of it, which I'm sure a lot of people did, but it's unnecessary. You shouldn't have to do that. It's not the way to start the game on the first boot. Just let us go straight to the menu and dive into what we want.
Yeah, the final items that I'll mention actually are related to graphics. I think that they can still do a lot better. I actually think that the textures and whatnot in NBA 2K19 are more realistic. I think the detail is more realistic. I think with the PS5 Gen 2Ks, and 2K25 is no exception, I think the players kind of have like a clay look to them. They don't look realistic. I don't think the muscles look realistic. I don't think the bodies look realistic. I think they kind of look like clay Gumby characters a lot of times. I think that they can do a better job of making these players look more realistic. And I actually had that expectation when we moved on to PS5 Gen that those improvements would be made, and they definitely were not. A lot of the players just look unnatural. I think that you play a game like 2K9, and I actually recently posted some gameplay footage from our season on Twitter, and people were calling this out. Just the detail, right? Like the reflections on the court, the detail in the stadium. Honestly, 2K25 from a graphic standpoint oftentimes looks blah. I just think that that's missing reflections. It's missing detail. All of that, and you actually see a lot of that detail on older games, especially like NBA 2K14 for like PS4, right? How detailed is the atmosphere in those games? Like just the way the courts look and the way the lights hit it, the way the jerseys look, the detail on the jerseys. On NBA 2K25, the jerseys always look completely stuck to the players. The jerseys are lacking detail. The shorts are lacking detail. All of that. They could do a lot more, in my opinion, from a graphics perspective to enhance the look of the game, to make the players look more realistic, to give them the appropriate looking muscle and body types, to make the atmosphere out there look and feel more alive. So that's what I would like to see from a graphics perspective. Do I think that this is what we're stuck with for the most part until PS6 gen? Yes. I think this is what we're going to get. Like, I don't think it's going to get better from here. But looking into the future, PS6 gen, I would love to see these players look a lot more lifelike.
Yeah, and look, I'm not the biggest critic when it comes to graphics, being a retro gamer as I am, and you as well can play old favorites, and I know that you and I both champion the idea of, we're not fans of that whole, I can't believe we used to think this looked good, because there was a time when it absolutely did. So we came from very humble graphics, humble beginnings of gaming graphics, so it's not like we are, no ray tracing, no, the sweat's not good enough, no shoelace physics, obviously a running gag here on the NLSC podcast, but yeah, it still matters, and you still want the games to harness the technology that they're working with, so yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I think the players oftentimes, and just the atmosphere looks more realistic on PS4 Gen 2Ks, like on many of them, including the one that you play the most, NBA 2K14 for PS4. So, Andrew, this was also a community question. I stated, we are getting close to NBA 2K26 preview season. What improvements are you hoping to see with the newest release? And we did receive quite a few responses. We're going to kick this off with T Gentry at Bucky T on Twitter. He states, improved foot planning, player movement, etc., and more engaged crowd noise and reactions to certain moments like past titles had. 2K25's graphics were the best of next gen so far, but they can still use some improvements, in my opinion. Also show more love and attention to past my NBA eras. So we echoed a lot of our thoughts from earlier in the show. And I definitely agree that the crowd reactions, the way they're into it, all of that stuff, I would like to see that more like real life. More like some past titles. But at the same time, I want to say that, you watch NBA games now on national broadcasts or on your local broadcast, and man, the crowds just don't seem to be what they used to, as far as like, reacting to certain things happening on the floor, getting excited for the action and everything. So some of what we're seeing in the newest game is almost realistic, right? As far as lack of enthusiasm shown, and the sounds and all of that stuff. I think you would agree.
Yeah, accidentally accurate, unfortunately. But I will say that it is important to have the crowd react logically to the action. We talk about 2K14, obviously, and as much as I love that game, a couple of the highlights that I've sent you, the diving to the floor and after a steal with those great steal mechanics in 2K14, and that fling over my head, my player's head, and the basket from the floor, the commentary really let me down on that play, unfortunately. So that has been an issue, another legacy issue there. So I absolutely agree. That would be a welcome improvement.
Yeah, my brother hit a game winner against me on 2K25, and it was the number one play in the top 10, but the commentary was all about the guy who passed it and how many assists he had.
Yeah.
So he hits the game winner, and it's like, oh, he records his 15th assist or whatever, and it's like, you got that one wrong.
Yeah, that's what's important here, yeah.
Right. Stephen at the Live King states, expecting more of the game, they haven't pushed the needle, so there's no expectations there. So he's not super optimistic that there's going to be major improvements in 2K26. Mr. Santucci at HoodiePap22 says, my request would be more roster-based, focused more on simulation instead of realism. Get rid of the city, get rid of my career, and just call it my park. Use my career for my NBA. Update the shoe options. You can't equip Skechers, Peak, etc. Equip HB option and update mods realistically. So he has a lot that he wants to see. He wants big changes here. It's talking about getting rid of my career and just call it my park. Use my career for my NBA. I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect there as far as what he wants and then what people would want. Yeah. Right. Like the majority would want, and that's okay because those are his interests and whatnot. But I think if you use my career for my NBA, it would get rid of a lot of the customization and a lot of the, different ways that people want to play in my NBA. Maybe not him specifically, but, people want options and whatnot. But definitely a unique response.
Yeah, and I do see where he's coming from as far as getting rid of the modes or combining them. I do think you need to have that separation of the franchise and career modes, but to kind of run with his idea, I would love to see offline my career return. A separation of the online scene and offline NBA-oriented my career. There is obviously wisdom in having the two of them combined, the fact that you can have the player leveling up in both areas, but being able to have that offline mode if you just have absolutely no interest in the online scene, having maybe a bit more of a bare bones offline my career that's just based around the NBA, and that would still be there when the service gets shut down, that is something I would love to see. So that would be the alternative that I'd suggest based on his suggestions, but I see where he's coming from. As far as removing the city and the neighborhood, look, I think that would be great. I think that the open worlds don't add enough to the experience to really justify being there, to be honest. I think they're more of a glorified loading screen more of the time. I appreciate the work that goes into them. I appreciate the aesthetic, but as far as what they bring to the experience, I don't think it's ultimately had a positive impact on the modes. It's pushed them online. That's gotten rid of the offline my career once the service gets shut down, so it's been very destructive in that regard. And again, I don't think the open world really suits the genre, at least as implemented so far. But unfortunately, taking them out would be going backwards, I think, in 2K's eyes. And I think a lot of people do enjoy, or certainly tolerate, I suppose. They kind of like the city and the neighborhood in a way. Not everyone, and it's not just an age thing. I've seen younger gamers talk about how they think it's unnecessary as well. This isn't just us long-time basketball gamers grumbling about the new thing. There are younger gamers who are saying this doesn't add to the experience at all. Unfortunately, I think 2K would see it as going backwards, taking more quote-unquote depth out of the game, so it's not going to happen. But I see where you're coming from, and I can't disagree that those open worlds really haven't improved my career at all.
experience at the Dom 45 states, I feel like the unnatural movements need to be assessed better. And I completely agree. I mentioned that earlier. He states the outdated animations that have been there for 2 generations need to be replaced with animations that fit this gen of consoles. And that speed boost steel animation needs to be removed. I think that they've done a great job adding new animations via Pro Play. I'm seeing a lot of different finishes at the hoop that I've never seen before in the 2K series. I think they look awesome for the most part, and many times they do feel pretty good. I think sometimes they feel a little bit canned because they are it's pro play playing out, but oftentimes they do feel organic and natural. Unnatural movements for me, a lot of it is just like the way changing direction feels like I stated, like try to dribble with your player in a circle and see how his body is glitching and hitching trying to get there, the ball warping, stuff like that, the skating, the unnatural like sliding across the floor. So I definitely agree on the unnatural movements piece.
Me too, and I do think it is a good point that the old animations are still there. I've said before in a previous show that I do suspect that some of the old tech talking to the new tech, the trying to integrate Pro Play with some of those old animations is resulting in some of the awkwardness. That is my guess.
Coach Parker at Renpin states, make All-Star Weekend events playable from Play Now. Include skills challenge. We would obviously love that, like NBA Live 2005-esque and whatnot would be great to have those accessible, offline and during the Play Now piece. He also goes on to state, bring back more shot meter options, especially for my NBA. Understanding most of my career players don't use a shot meter. And I know you use the shot meter. I do not. Would you want more shot meter options?
As far as like visual cues, they're fine, I suppose. It doesn't hurt to have those options for people who want them. It doesn't really take anything away from anything that I'd want to see in the game. So, I mean, I wouldn't really use them myself. I don't really like the different green animations. I don't really want to see that. I prefer the old approach in that respect. But I know that people do enjoy having those different options. So, yeah, I mean, add them for people who want them. And I'm just going to probably choose the blandest one. And yeah, All-Star Weekend, I'd love to see that back. I really do think that needs to be an exhibition mode as well. When it comes around in my career or my NBA, you're not used to it. You're not used to the controls because you can't practice it. Oh, sure, you can keep a save in my NBA or my league at the All-Star Weekend and keep reloading it and playing it. But it's one of those situations where it shouldn't come down to that. It should be accessible as an exhibition mode as it used to be. So, yeah, all for that.
Coach Parker continues with, my NBA needs more autonomy in developing players. Create game, season, and career goals tasks for each player. When they achieve the goal or task, award development points to that player and allow us to control how the points are dispersed to upgrade the player's attributes. So some good suggestions there. Phil Lime 2002 at Phil Lime 2K states, no RNG. I'm 100% sure it's there. He states, lighting like in 2K14, 2K fixing glitches and bugs within hours, park events that work properly. Apparently, there are huge issues. Better servers, make microtransactions more affordable. They will never get rid of that. The microtransactions are here to stay. I like his approach there where it's like, I know they're not going to get rid of them, but make them more affordable. But unfortunately, Phil Lime, 2K, that's going to cut into their bottom line. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
But by all means, throw it out as a suggestion because pushback is important.
Stephen at the Live King also had another response to the original thread. He states, get rid of the entire contest system, allow users to determine everything on defense, less canned animations, a whole revamped player movement system that relies on user versus user in general. He just wants that, that feel to be there, for it to be more organic, for it to be more true competition, as opposed to all these canned sequences playing out, badges meaning as much as they do and affecting the action and making it even more unrealistic. So you can't argue with those points. Mike P for 3 at Mike Purchard states, honestly, I just wish 2K would put more focus into the actual NBA portion of the game, like they used to do with the pre-launch strategy vids they used to do, and focus more on the NBA gameplay and not just the neighborhood and park play. Basketball is a team game, not just my player. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people who used to play the older titles that appreciated that true focus, enhanced focus, and primary focus on the NBA portion of the game, as opposed to now where it's like it's all about getting your face in the game, getting your player out there, trying to push you to pay for upgrades to your player, and it's focused on the street or the park or the rec or how is your player being upgraded, and it's less about like the NBA.
Seasonal content and clothing. I guess we are now the Barbie dress-up game that Ronnie 2K hit back with that quip, so to speak, against somebody who was talking about wanting more hairstyles years ago. That tweet, that post on X, continues to age like milk. But yeah, that focus on the NBA made 2K so fantastic. It's why it overtook NBA Live all those years ago. That authenticity, that focus on the NBA and the depth and the authenticity of that representation. So yeah, absolutely agree.
Cookie Dot at Cookie Dot 69, who made his debut in the top 10 plays of the week this past Saturday, and not only made his debut, but he was the number one play of the week with a bounce alley-oop from Vince Carter to Tracy McGrady on NBA 2K25. So that was a great highlight. He states, I would like them to look at 2K14 PS4 version, do it side by side with 2K25, and they should write down what bloody went wrong for this company to be in this state right now. And he states that's really it. Anyway, there's no more hope for 2K to improve. Remove a feature and bring it back to make the fanboys go crazy. LMAO. We've talked about that on past episodes where they had a feature in the game, people liked it, they removed it, brought it back a couple years later, and then acted like it was this great new feature. So I see where he's coming from there. And 2K14, once again, Andrew, getting some love as it relates to the look.
Rightfully so. And hey, bring back NBA Live. That's not a 2K wish, but that is a wish for basketball gaming in general. Bring back some competition, bring back alternatives, and that's got to be good for both companies.
Miguel Velasco 41 at Miguel Velasco 41 states, gameplay wise, it feels good. Might need to spruce up things on the defensive side, though. Also, maybe they could show more love to the presentation. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Brian Anderson and Grant Hill, I'll tell you that. I try to switch them off whenever I possibly can. Presentation wise, too, as far as the crowd, the way they react and all of that stuff, definitely could use some improvement. Justin Francis at Justin Francis 7 states 2K25 was a good step forward for gameplay, so continue to refine and expand upon that. And I do agree with him there. I do think that 2K25 was a step in the right direction in some areas as it relates to gameplay. He goes on to say, next, let's get faces for the My Team exclusive guys from the 50s, 70s, etc., and make more available offline content for more official and or user created classic teams. He states they're hinting at this in My Team Breakout. Ben Matlock at Ben Matlock states, bring back custom arena music. Yeah, that would be awesome. DC Gill, Rockets fan, states, all arena PA needs an update. Bad. Mark at Black Zed 2013 states, AI PNR defensive coverages need more layers and variation between teams. AI defensive matchups, logic, simply done by position rather than by logical matchup is a regression. And I definitely agree with that. I don't like the fact that I can't pause the game now during a game and go to a defensive matchup screen and, like we could in so many of the old titles, and just choose the coverage in that screen, as in, I want this guy to guard this guy to guard that guy, all of that. It feels like that's been taken away and it is sorely missed.
Again, it's a sim game. It should have those options, that depth to the strategy and AI. Absolutely. And a very quick point in representation. Absolutely agree about Brian Anderson and company. It'd be really nice to be able to select which team you want. And I suppose they want it to be random or alternate because they don't want people not listening to something they've recorded. But that should be a point that if people are not listening to this team, then maybe people just want that. They just want the A team there, if you will. So yeah, I would love to have that option to choose between teams, kind of like what NCAA Basketball 10 did, where you could choose between the ESPN and CBS presentation. Of course, there is no network branding in NBA 2K, so that would be a fun idea as well, and who knows what the future will bring there. That's another idea to float, I suppose. But I'd also like to see options like NBA Live had, where you can have the NBA Finals presentation, or the Conference Finals presentation, or Players presentation, or regular season, and just be able to pick that for a Play Now game. I'm really surprised that 2K didn't adopt that after NBA Live introduced it.
Last response on Twitter, Royce at RoySpring14 states 2K25 was fine and an improvement over 21 through 24, but keep it up. Also, thank you to the NLSC community, Andrew and D for Free, for getting all information, highlights, and such out either here or on Facebook, the website, or the podcast. It really helps the game. Wish 2K would realize it. And we appreciate that he supports the content. He's also been a longtime listener to the show and always has valuable feedback. He answers the community questions, all of that stuff. So yeah, we're really happy that you're enjoying the content. He also sent about 8 tweets as a response to this mailbag question. I'm going to read a few of them, but if you want to see all of his responses, they are under my tweet on @D4 3G on Twitter, so you can find that and look for those. He states, fix rosters on all game modes. Don't have so many NPC type filler players on the teams. I know that sounds like a broken record. Maybe give new camera angles. I would love to see that isometric view, Andrew.
Yeah.
Work on player likeness and moves. Too many players play the same. And he says also get rookies in the game right away and not lean so heavy on park. He goes on to state, make the ABA ball an option to play with in game modes. Also have that commissioner's ball for WNBA games available too. I know he loves the ABA. I know he loves his classic hoops. He goes on to state, I would like to clarify the rookie comment that is for both NBA and WNBA. I would like to play as Paige Beckers, Cooper Flagg, and others right away, not when the first patch is in. Also, not so many patches. Get the game right before customers pay hard-earned money for it. Also, more respect and attention paid to my NBA eras, classic and all-time teams, for players, coaches, courts, floors, jerseys, everything. All that can be done. Please do for the game and the gamers. No generic players, coaches, none of that. I should have put that first. He also states, also more options for street, like time of day, rules, crowd, large or small, etc. Definitely agree with that. Also, WNBA players in street, either all WNBA or mixed WNBA with NBA current or past. I would like to see Caitlin Clark, Beckers, and others on the street court with Luka, Kawhi, his Aarons, and others. And that is actually something that TG So Good was working on, if you remember correctly. He was talking about it, I believe, in the Discord. He was talking about trying to get that going on the next-gen consoles, doing some console modding and whatnot. But he was trying to make it so you could use WNBA players against NBA players. And I would love that option. I think that would be super cool. I think it would be tough to do, but we would absolutely be doing a fantasy draft and having fun with that on my side in my house. So I definitely think that would be a cool improvement to NBA 2K26 and 2K's moving forward.
Another idea that NBA Live did that 2K should absolutely borrow, and that was the advantage when we had 2 games, that they could borrow ideas from each other when one of them came up with a good idea, right stick dribbling, franchise mode, whatever. So yeah, once again, that is the benefit of competition, and shout out to Royce as always some very nice comments from Royce about our content, and as you say, long-time listener, and yeah, a lot of ideas that we agree with.
Moving over to Discord, Vetman states, the only way 2K could pull me back in on the newest games is if they make player movement feel more responsive. We talked about that earlier. We definitely agree there. Pro play makes everything too sluggish and too animation based. I definitely agree that sometimes it does make it a little bit more canned. However, I do like the full integration of pro play. He states the dulled, muted sense of having a tactile connection to what my player is doing makes 2K25 feel unengaging and boring. I can barely last a 12-minute quarter in the game before starting to feel like I want to turn the game off and do something else. I will agree that oftentimes the game does kind of like let you down as far as the feel, like the atmosphere. Sometimes you can get bored because it's lacking excitement. So I can definitely agree there. He goes on to say there's all sorts of other stuff I dislike about 2K25 New Gen, but even if they fix the other stuff, if the game is boring, then it's dead in the water. Exactly. The gameplay is just so important. Avery actually agreed with Vetman. He states agreed 100%. Walk Him Down Ya states same way I felt too. Great sandbox for offline players, but sometimes it's boring unless I put some house rules in place. And lastly, on Discord, Murat Badger states, I don't think 2K genuinely sucks. It's still playable in offline modes. As long as you shy away from online modes, it's a decent experience. I heard offline gameplay is actually great. Play now, association, etc. He continues on with, it's not like Madden where the gameplay is a mess. I enjoyed 2K19 a lot until my team. So a little bit more positive about the gameplay, about the offline experience, not thinking that the overall product sucks. And I agree. I don't think the overall product sucks, Andrew, right? We've, like I said, 400 hours into it, with my brothers. Most of that is gameplay. Most of that is fun. Most of that was with laughs. We definitely got our money's worth, and we didn't put any money into the game over the base price. So yeah, definitely love all the responses from the community on Discord and Twitter, but I also believe we received a couple on Facebook.
Yes, a few more answers to share here. David L., and shout out to David L., who has helped out with some Friday Fives, some research for Friday Fives, particularly Phantom Stints, says more classic teams and eras, as well as classic jerseys and TV graphics. I would absolutely love my NBA eras to incorporate accuracy there and have those readily available outside of my NBA eras as well. Ems is critical of player movement, which was one of our key points as well. And Clayman, apologise if I've mispronounced that, says, a game on PC that works fine, 2K25 was too laggy, too much stutters. And I know that hasn't been your experience, Derek. It's been running pretty well on my rig as well. You have a more powerful rig than I do. It does seem to be more of an NVIDIA thing, but with that being said, yeah, I do want to see the PC version as optimised as it possibly can be.
Yeah, I want to bring up a point that somebody else brought up on social media, and I definitely agree with this. These new games, loading up with having to build shaders, and sometimes depending on the PC you have, and sometimes it doesn't depend at all on the PC you have, but it takes like 10 to 20 minutes in order for the shaders to build for you to get into it. People are scratching their heads like, why does that happen only on like some games? Maybe they're more poorly optimized. I don't know what's happening. But then on other games that look like they're even better graphics, that have even more detail, you can just jump right into the game and they don't have to load shaders. Like, I guess I don't understand that. I guess I'd have to be a game developer maybe to understand that. But, there's a game that I posted recently in the Discord, and this is universally known as just an amazing looking game. Doom 2016. You don't need to load shaders for that. You just jump right into Doom and boom, it looks amazing. The graphics are fantastic. No shaders need to load. A game that just was released, Stellar Blade, for PC, and I believe it was originally on, consoles. No, you don't need to wait for shaders to load on that game. And the game is just absolutely gorgeous. The detail is unbelievable. The graphics are just awesome. I don't understand what this new thing is, on PS5 gen games, in turn, those PC ports and whatnot, where shaders need to build for like 20 minutes before you get into them. I think that's crazy. I don't understand that. I think that frustrates gamers sometimes. I also want to point out that the optimization issue did seem to be mostly tied with NVIDIA. I didn't have any problems with this game's optimization. I can basically run it maxed out. I've shown videos of it maxed out at 60 FPS, 1080p, all of that. I actually think that they did a better job than I thought they would. As it relates to optimization, we actually saw very few complaints overall about getting this game to run properly. So I'm actually going to give a hats off to 2K when it comes to the optimization piece, because it could have been a whole lot worse. I was expecting a lot of people to be complaining about, hey, this game isn't running properly, I'm getting constant crashes, my graphics card can't handle it, and whatnot. So they did a little bit better than I thought they would.
Agreed. Of course, room for improvement, I suppose, and if they can optimize it further, so much the better. The shaders issue is actually probably one of the barriers for me as well. I do have the PS5 version as a fallback, but that is one of the reasons why I haven't been playing it as much on PC. It does take a while to load, although I do have it installed on a HDD rather than the SSD. I might try moving it to the SSD and seeing if I do get better performance with the shader building. I would certainly assume so, but that could be a reason. But once again, that is a deterrent to people.
And before we wrap up this show, I did want to say thank you to the community for all your responses. But breaking, the Phoenix Suns are trading two-time NBA Finals MVP Kevin Durant to the Houston Rockets for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 pick in the 2025 draft, and 5 second-round picks. Sources tell ESPN, and that was reported by Shams. Durant is now on the Houston Rockets. I think he wanted to go to the Spurs. I think that was his primary want for a destination, but there he is in Houston.
Yeah, stealing some thunder from the finals, no pun intended, with that trade there. So already a subplot set up for the 2026 season, and we'll obviously see that move in NBA 2K26 as well. And as far as the previous season, Derek, I'm guessing late July, early August is when it will really tip off with any kind of substantial news. We will, of course, cover it on the NLSC. I will summarize the developer blogs, the developer insights as they come along. I always encourage people to read the original blogs for the full scoop, but I do like to get the key information and provide that in an easy-to-read, point-by-point form. And, of course, we'll be talking about it on the podcast, so stay tuned for that. But with that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, thank you for tuning in, and please join us again next week, and every week, on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts. In the meantime, make sure you're following us on social media, just so we can get in touch with us, and of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
You can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on the NLSC, D43, and on YouTube, D43.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. The NLSC is on X, Facebook, and Blue Sky at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep a look to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.